Not all blocks impact the game the same way. There are the blocks where the ball gets swatted out of bounds, which obviously won't mean anything if the opponent ends up scoring on that same trip down the floor. There are the blocks where the ball ends up loose and it's a scramble for possession. Then there are the blocks where the ball is secured by the player rejecting the shot or is strategically transported to a teammate who can then start a fast break and create easier scoring chances in transition. Bill Russell was a master at keeping his blocks in play, which allowed the Celtics back then to get out and run more than any other team in that era. Years later, this was something Alonzo Mourning really excelled at as part of his whole defensive bundle, and it helped him win back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year awards in 1999 and 2000. Not only was Mourning a smart defender, but he was one of the most physical, tenacious, and relentless defenders of all time. Mourning's excellent timing, 7'6" wingspan, unremitting pursuit of the ball, and defensive positioning helped him accumulate 2,356 blocks in his NBA career, 11th most in league history. There were 17 games, regular season and playoffs combined, in which he blocked 8 or more shots, 13th most in NBA history. One of his most dominant defensive performances came in Game 1 of Miami's first-round playoff series against Detroit in 2000 when he blocked 9 shots. Arguably his most memorable single block was this one on February 24, 1995, when he prevented Anthony Peeler from dunking it down on a Lakers fast break. In Miami's championship-clinching Game 6 win over Dallas in 2006, he came off the bench to record 5 blocks. At the time, that was tied for the most blocks by a reserve in NBA Finals history. In 2019, Serge Ibaka set the new record with 6 blocks in Game 3 of the Finals between Toronto and Golden State. Mourning even had a 4-block game in his third-to-last game of his career, which came on December 15, 2007 against the Pacers. I'll get to his injuries and health issues in a bit. He made it extremely hard for opponents to establish low post position with how physical, well-built, and resolute he was. Shaquille O'Neal, who was drafted ahead of Mourning in 1992, shared a story once about how Pat Riley, after the Heat acquired Shaq from the Lakers, told him that he wanted him to get as physically shredded as Zoe. That's just how physically imposing Mourning looked. The other big thing about Zoe was his passion and intensity. So many times he would get the crowd into it with energy moments like you see here. I don't think there's a player in NBA history who reacted with this much fervency after big plays than Zoe. He was a really serious player who wore his heart on his sleeve. Sometimes though, his emotions would get the best of him, like when he got into this altercation with former teammate Larry Johnson late in Game 4 of Miami's first-round playoff series against New York in 1998, causing him to get suspended for the decisive Game 5, which was ultimately won by the Knicks. Mourning was pretty skilled on offense too. While not the smoothest or most polished, especially compared to the other great offensive centers of that era, Zoe's blend of power, finesse, relentlessness on the offensive glass, and ability to run the floor made him an offensive threat. We saw all that on display during his best offensive game of his career, which occurred on March 29, 1996 against the Bullets, when he scored 50 points. He had a nice little jump hook, he finished around the rim with a ton of authority, he had a face-up game where he can make mid-range jumpers, he was mobile in his prime to get out and run on the break, and then most significant was his ability to draw fouls and get to the free throw line a ton. He led the league in free throw attempts per game in both the 1995-96 and 1996-97 seasons. He wasn't a great free throw shooter, but not horrendous either. For his career, he shot 69.2% from the stripe. "61 times, regular season and playoffs combined, he scored at least 30 points. Mourning made a few game winners in his career. His most famous one came in Charlotte's first-round series clinching Game 4 victory over Boston in 1993 when he hit this 20-foot jumper with 0.4 of a second left as a rookie. He had 33 points that night. This was the Hornets' first ever playoff series victory. Boston's last possession often gets forgotten. Kevin McHale, in his last ever NBA game as a player, threw a perfect alley-oop pass from around midcourt to D. Brown, who looked like he was going to drop it in at the buzzer, but the ball got tipped by Kendall Gill, with many unsure whether this should have been called goaltending. While Charlotte would lose to New York in the next round, Mourning and Patrick Ewing, fellow Georgetown alumni, went toe-to-toe throughout that series. Mourning also made this game-winning dunk against the Bucks on April 17, 2001, and this one against the Hawks on March 4, 2006. He had one of the more unforgettable press conferences of all time. After the Heat went down 0-3 to Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the 1997 Eastern Conference Finals, he boldly promised his team would win Game 4, which they did behind his 18 points and 14 rebounds. Chicago, however, would take care of business in Game 5 at home to advance to the finals. Shortly after helping Team USA win gold at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Australia, Mourning was diagnosed with a severe kidney disease. Initially ruled out for that subsequent season, he ended up returning for the final 13 games. He would go on to play in 75 games for the Heat in 2001-02, but his kidney condition worsened ahead of the 2002-03 year, which kept him out of action that entire season. It was thought going into the following season that his health had improved, which is why the New Jersey Nets signed him to a 4-year contract in the summer of 03. However, just a dozen games into that year, his health went downward again, and he announced his retirement due to complications from his kidney disease. But after going through a successful kidney transplant, he returned to the court for the 2004-05 season. With New Jersey no longer a title contender, Mourning won it out, and he eventually was included in the trade that delivered Vince Carter to the Nets from the Raptors. After refusing to report to Toronto, Mourning and the Raptors negotiated a buyout, which paved the way for him to return to Miami, where he would win a championship in 2006 before suffering a career-ending knee injury in December 2007. All in all, Mourning played 15 seasons in the NBA, 3 with Charlotte, 10.5 with Miami, and 1.5 with New Jersey, and averaged 17.1 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 2.8 blocks in the regular season. Right before his 4th NBA season, he rejected a contract extension from the Hornets, which led to them trading him in 1995 to Miami in a deal that involved Glenn Rice going to Charlotte. He was a 7-time All-Star, made the All-NBA first team in 1999 and the second team in 2000, and in both those years won the Depoy Award. He has 2 gold medals with Team USA, one from the 1994 FIBA World Cup in Canada and the other from the 2000 Olympics in Australia. He also won the bronze at the 1990 FIBA World Cup in Argentina. He's been in an executive role with the Heat since 2009. So that'll wrap up this video. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe.